Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Hello, Selena. Lovely to see you. Hi, Claire. I'm just going to wait just a few more minutes for more people to join, and then we'll properly start. I hope you've got all your cheeses in front of you and you're salivating profusely. I know I am. Happy Saturday. Right. We've given them 2 minutes. I think we can start now. Right, here we go. Welcome, everyone, and happy Saturday. Happy Big Cheese Weekender. I hope you're all as excited as I am to share some lovely cheeses tonight. And today I'd like to talk to you about two of my favorite topics, and that is, of course, cheese and wellness. I hope you're all excited to unlock the secrets of year-round enjoyment, which I'm gonna share some of my secrets tonight, and hopefully you'll learn loads and I'll inspire you to enjoy cheese year-round. So to introduce myself to those who haven't met me in person yet, my name is Svetlana and I'm the founder of The Cheese Lady. We're an award-winning cheese retailer based in Scotland, in Haddington, and our speciality is farmhouse and artisan cheese. So that's the kind of cheese that's made with fantastic, wholesome milk. It's crafted with love and precision, and it is matured to absolute perfection. So very flavorsome and good for you cheeses. Our mission with my business is to champion these cheeses. And along the way, we also like to inspire some joyful living, or what the French call joie de vivre. I have a nearly 20-year-long career in cheese and fine cheese. I've been a retailer for a very long time. I've also been a cheese maker, a cheese maturer. I've judged cheeses all around the world, and I've written 2 books on cheese. And of course, I'm a member of the wonderful Cheese Academy, who's organized this lovely event. But I'd like to share something a little bit personal with you. Not many people know this about me, but about 20 years ago, when I was much younger, I actually found myself with an eating disorder, and a doctor told me that if I don't, so to speak, back up my ideas, I will not finish very well or won't enjoy very good quality of life. So I needed to educate myself on nutrition and on health in general. So I dove into that, and for the last 20 years I've been a big student of that. So fast forward 20 years now, of course, as you now know, cheese is my life, cheese and wine and all of those delicious things. And I often get asked by my customers and anybody who meets me and finds out that I work with cheese, how do I manage to stay fit when my life practically is cheese? So to answer that question, I've written my second book, which is the Cheese Connoisseur's Handbook. And this is where I go into a lot of detail about great cheese and about how to enjoy it as part of a balanced, healthy diet year-round. And today we'll touch on a few of those things. If you have any questions, by the way, please do drop them in the chat. I'm not gonna answer them straight away, but I will be sure at the very end to jump into them and answer as many as I can. So I hope you're all up for it, and I hope you've got all your cheeses on the ready. Now, I would like to share with you the core of my philosophy on cheese. I think fine cheese is fascinating. That's what really got me interested in cheese as a career and just as life all of those years ago when I started, is that I just couldn't believe the variety of cheese that we can get from something as simple as milk. If you think about it, it's a very kind of plain looking substance, but what we end up with is a variety of textures, colors, aromas, and I think it's just incredibly fascinating. And I wanted to learn more. And now I know some of those things that I like to share. But I also believe that fine cheese is good for you. I believe that it's good for your body and it's good for your soul. And that's the kind of thing that we will be talking about today. So I'd like to kind of highlight the things that I'll be talking to you today. So we'll definitely savor some of our farmhouse and artisan cheeses that we specialize in. We'll deepen our understanding of what farmhouse and artisan cheese is. I will chat to you about how to enjoy every bite and how to get the most out of it, and talk about the differences between different milks, and we'll touch on the healthier amounts of cheese to enjoy. Now, before we start actually sampling the cheese, but of course, if you can't wait, please do dive in and enjoy some of the cheeses, because I know it's very hard to resist them. I'd like to take a few steps back and just to get everybody on the same page to help you with understanding what actually farmhouse and artisan cheese is versus industrial cheese. I think it's all about the origin of the milk, of where the milk comes from, and therefore its quality. So farmhouse cheese is produced when there is a farmer who has their own source of milk, and they also are the maker of the cheese. So essentially, milk never leaves the farm. It just goes from cow, from sheep, from goat into the cheese making vat, and the cheesemaker, also the farmer, makes the cheese. So that kind of cheese we call farmhouse cheese. Now, in another scenario, we have a cheesemaker who is very knowledgeable about making cheese, but they don't have their own animals to milk. Therefore, they go outside and search for the best milk they can find nearby, and they source it from nearby farms. In this scenario, milk still doesn't travel very far. It comes from nearby farms, but it's not owned by the cheesemaker. And in case of industrial cheeses, milk travels for very vast distances. It comes from pretty much across the country, and it all goes into this big facility where they make bigger amounts of cheese with the use of a lot of machinery. And therefore, that milk always would need to be either pasteurized or even sterilized. And of course, that would have a knock-on effect on the flavor and so on. Now, specifically when it comes to farmhouse and artisan cheese, which I also call fine cheese, I believe there are 6 different elements that cheeses need to tick for me to call them farmhouse and artisan. They do have to come from fantastic, complex milk, from happy animals. So animals who have a lovely diet and a lovely life. They have to be made in a traditional way with a lot of human involvement, because people who make cheese need to understand their milk. Milk changes seasonally, and that understanding is very crucial. Farmhouse and artisan cheeses are matured properly and slowly to develop their full flavor and aroma, their full potential, essentially. They are full of health benefits. All of that goodness that is in milk originally needs to be locked in and preserved. They have seasonality. Farmhouse and artisan cheeses are not so standardized that they're always just the same, whether it's winter or summer, autumn or spring. They do have seasonal variations because milk has seasonal variations. And they have terroir. So they can tell us about the place where they come from, because milk absorbs all of that into it. And we'll touch more on that today. So without further ado, let's start tasting some of the cheeses actually. And for the first cheese, we are going to journey over to France and to the region in the west of France called Poitou. Poitou is part of the Loire Valley in France, and the Loire Valley is very famous for its goat's milk cheeses. If you've ever traveled there, you will know the different shapes and varieties of goat's milk cheeses that you can find there. Chabichou is one of the most famous ones, and of course, it is protected by law. So there are rules and regulations that cheesemakers have to follow to call their cheese Chabichou de Poitou. Today, we're trying chabichou that's made with pasteurized goat's milk. Its minimum maturation is 10 days, but often it can be matured for longer than that. On the outside, it has a natural rind, which is predominantly composed of Geotrichum candida mold, and the rind is edible. So do enjoy the entire cheese. Now, it takes about 1.3 liters of milk to make a little barrel of chabichou, which is about 170 grams. So it does take a lot of milk to produce it. And there are only 3 breeds of goat that are allowed in production of Chabichou de Poitou, and you can see them here. Now, about maturity of Chabichou de Poitou, as I've mentioned, it can be enjoyed at different ages and stages. You can see here going from left to right. A very young chabichou would have quite a smooth rind. It will be quite creamy and soft on the palate, very zingy. And as it matures, you can see it gets visibly firmer, more kind of moldy on the outside, and the texture gets a lot more firm kind of and compact, so to speak. And if you have a look at your Chabichou de Poitou that you're about to enjoy, or maybe already enjoying, I think we can agree that, well, at least the one that I have is about 4 weeks old. So that's the one I've got. And now one of the crucial parts of the tasting, I think, and one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is how do you get the most out of every bite of cheese that you enjoy in your life? And this is where I like to remind everybody that we have 5 senses. It's very easy with cheese and with things that we love to eat to forget about the other 4 senses and just go straight in, and the cheese is away and the wine is drunk. But I think if we go back a little bit, slow down, we'll be able to savor it more fully. So what are the 4 senses that I'd like you to remember? Well, first of all, it's hearing. And I know hearing cheese is a little bit of a funny thing, or hearing any food can be kind of, how do I do that? But if you think back to today's experience, even when you were preparing your cheese board, you probably opened the paper that the cheese arrived in, and there was some rustling of the paper, and you probably, even without realizing, started to get excited about it and started to salivate. So I think it's all part of the experience. It's the same as when you hear a champagne cork pop and you get very excited about enjoying some champagne. So those things do happen. It's just when we pay more attention, we notice them even better. Now that we've got our cheeses cut up and they're in front of us, we can also use our sight. So let's pick up our piece of chabichou or whatever maybe other goat's milk cheese you have, and we'll look at it. And we'll be asking ourselves a few questions. So first of all, I'd like to ask myself, what is the color of this cheese? And what can this color tell me? The color can tell me a few things. It can tell me the origin of the milk, whether it's cows, sheep, or goats. It can tell me the age of the cheese. It can tell me maybe how it's going to taste in some instances, whether we have any flavor additives or anything like that. So the color can tell us quite a lot. So very important to examine the cheese. We can also see the rind on it. And as I've mentioned before, the rind here is edible. It's nice and wrinkly and beautiful. And under the rind, you can see there is a cream line. So now there's a cream line and a kind of chalky, kind of more compact core inside. So we can tell that there will be differences in mouthfeel or how it feels on our palate, essentially. And if there's any other things you notice, please do let me know or just note them for yourself. Now, next thing we can do is we'll touch the cheese. have a little touch, and this will give us an idea of how it will be on our palate texture-wise. So there is a little bit of give. If you have a knife, you can potentially even spread it a little bit. It's a soft cheese without being gooey. I think hopefully we can all agree on that. So yeah, the next thing we can do is smell. It's got a lovely, very complex aroma. There is sweetness, there is tanginess, mushroominess. And I mean, this is very, very individual now. If you smell certain things that I didn't mention, of course, it's your individual nose and your palate. Those things are completely correct. So spend your time just inhaling the aroma, because it plays a very important role in our perception of the flavor as well. And finally, without further ado, you can pop the cheese in your mouth and now fully enjoy it. And what I'd like to encourage you to do as well, when you get to the stage of enjoying the cheese, close your eyes and just completely appreciate how everything that we've just discussed and examined came together on your palate. Now, while you're doing that, I also like to share this kind of spectrum of flavors that the producers of Chabichou du Poitou find in it. And I hope you can pick some of these up as well yourself. I know this isn't French, but some things kind of make sense even in English. So there might be some farmyardy smells and taste notes, fruity, mushroomy, vegetal. So all of those things are there for you to find and enjoy. So it just takes a little bit of time. And now let's talk about different health aspects of cheeses, and especially goat's milk cheese in this instance. So I often get asked which cheeses are the lightest. So here I have a little table for you to show in terms of composition of fat and protein and lactose, which cheeses are lightest. And in this case, we can see that goat's milk compared to the other two milks is the lightest in fat, whereas sheep's milk is the richest. And you can also see that sheep's milk not only kind of more fatty, it's also got more protein, more lactose, and more ash. So it is just the richest and the best for you nutritionally. So when it comes to milk, we can see goat's milk is the lightest. However, this is only part of the story. What is also important to consider is how firm the cheese is that you're going to enjoy. And that will give you another perspective. So when we look, for instance, at these two cow's milk cheeses, like a Camembert or Winslade and Gruyere, we can all visually see, and we know that the Camembert will have a lot more moisture in it. And moisture is water, essentially. Whereas Gruyere has a lot more solids. So therefore, we would need to completely dry these two cheeses out to measure their fat content. So it's fat content in dry matter that you will find on the cheeses. So when it comes to soft cheeses like Camembert and Winslade, you'll actually find that it has 25% fat, versus firmer cheeses like Gruyere and Comté, which will have 52% fat or thereabouts. So I hope that makes sense and gives you some help. Now we'll move on to our second cheese, and we're staying in France, but we're going to a different region. One of my absolute favorite, most favorite regions in France. It's gorgeous. If you haven't visited, please do yourself a favor and go there as soon as possible. So Alsace is famous for its wines, for its architecture. But when it comes to cheese, interestingly, it doesn't have a whole lot to offer other than the lovely Münster. It is a stunning cheese. I absolutely adore it. It must be one of my 10 or 20 top favorite cheeses out there. The Münster that we're going to try tonight is made with pasteurized cow's milk, traditional rennet. Its minimum maturation period is 3 weeks, but it can be matured for as long as 10 weeks and sometimes even longer. Personally, I love it fully ripe when it's super, super gooey and super, super aromatic. So it's got a semi-firm texture, as you will find when you touch the cheese and when you have it on your palate. And it has a washed rind, which I will explain in a few seconds. Now, this is another cheese that's protected by French law. That means that there are rules and regulations that everybody has to follow when making Münster. However, it's important to note with things like Münster and other cheeses that are protected by law that there can be variations on the scale, on the kind of grades of how these cheeses come in. So Münster can be made in a farmhouse production, so it'll have a fermier on it. It can be made artisanally, so slightly larger, but still with a little more care and great milk, or it can be made industrially. So you can tell that there will be flavor variations when it comes to these kinds of things. Now, washed rind cheeses are extremely delicious, and some of you may be familiar, but for those who are not, I'd like to explain the term washed rind cheeses. As you can see here on the picture, they're literally washed on the outside during the maturation process. Why do we wash the cheeses on the outside? Is to create this delicious family of cheeses. They grow bacterium called B. linens, and those are the bacterium that are responsible for their color of the rind, which normally is kind of orangey or pinky. And they give them an incredible and very memorable aroma. So if you'd like to pick up your piece of Münster and have a little whiff, you'll see what I'm talking about. These cheeses are often known as stinky cheeses, or aromatic, I like to say. In terms of flavor, you'll find that it has an incredibly savory, kind of meaty flavor. It's not extremely strong because you would think, oh, with such a smell, it might be really, really strong on the palate. It's actually quite gentle, but it's got that lovely savoriness and nice and creamy on the palate. Now, when it comes to lactose in cheese, we know that a lot of people are concerned about lactose, so I think it's worth touching on that for a little while. So I've here given you composition of milk and composition of cheese on the right-hand side. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is this lactose part, so the pinky part. As you will see, in milk, we will have about 4.8% of it being lactose, whereas when it comes to cheese, it's about 1%. And remember, these are averages. So, but when we get to cheese, you can see that the percentage increased dramatically. So there's a lot of it removed during the cheese making process. And this is what happens. When we start making cheese, we add starter culture to the milk. And the starter culture actually digests all of the lactose that it can into lactic acid. And this is a fundamental first step of the cheese making process. Whatever is not digested by lactic acid eventually gets washed out, because the next step is to cut the curd. Once we've set the curd, we cut it. And what happens is we separate the curd from whey, and whey washes out a lot of the remaining lactose with it. The smaller we cut the pieces of curd, the more lactose gets washed out. Slightly bigger the curd, a little bit more lactose is trapped in there. And when we make these firm cheeses, for instance, whatever is trapped in the curd of the cheese gets broken down with age. So if your concern with cheese is lactose, I highly recommend going for very firm, mature cheeses. And it doesn't really matter whether they are cow's milk, sheep's milk, or goat's milk, broadly speaking. All of the milks have lactose, as you've seen before. But what is more important is that the cheese is mature, and whatever is left is washed out and broken down with age. So I do hope that helps. So now our third cheese that we're going to try tonight is Appenzeller. And that must be another one of my top favorite cheeses, and no surprise that I decided to showcase it tonight. This is a cheese with a 700-year-long history. And throughout this time, this cheese has been made with raw cow's milk and traditional rennet. So they kept this tradition very much alive for the 700 years. And it's a very classic Alpine cheese. So when you think of Alpine cheeses, they usually come in big wheels. They have a smooth texture. And this is one of those Alpine classics. Now, there are four main varieties of Appenzeller in existence. There are a few others, but these are the four main ones. Going from left to right, you will see that they're distinguished by the color of the foil on the outside. So the youngest one at 3 months has a silver foil. Then we get a bit more mature with a gold foil. And these are the two cheeses I would probably recommend mostly for kind of cooking, for your sandwiches and things like that. But if you want to showcase something delicious and incredibly complex on your cheese board, then consider going for black or purple. So, and the one that we're trying tonight is the purple label Appenzeller. Sorry, it's just gotten really dark in here. Just gonna put the light on. Right, so let's have a look at our Appenzeller. If you have it in front of you, have a look at the color first and foremost, and you will see if you compare the Appenzeller to your shabby shoe, that's got a completely different color. It's much darker. It's kind of hay and gold, very intense and very kind of deep and profound. If you look even more closely, you will notice that there are some tiny specks of something throughout the piece. And those are the crystals that develop with age. A lot of people confuse them for salt, but those are actually protein crystals. They're super delicious and they're lovely, give you a lovely crunch on the teeth. What else can we see? We can see that there are a little bit kind of little openings in the paste, and those are known as eyes, completely a classic thing of Alpine cheeses. Now, if we touch the cheese and compare them to the previous cheeses that we've tried tonight, we'll see the texture is much firmer. There's a little bit of a give. So I wouldn't call this cheese hard, but it's definitely firm. And let's smell it. Let's break it right under our nose to open all of that gorgeous aroma. There is nutty notes, brothy notes, and whatever else you might perceive. Oh, just absolutely incredible and keeps giving. And let's try it on the palate as well. How smooth and intense and beautiful and lingering. It is just cheese that keeps on giving. Love it. Now, there is a bit of a secret ingredient to make an Appenzeller, and it is the brine that the cheese gets washed with during the early stages of its maturation. So it is a wash drying cheese, but eventually it gets drier and not as sticky as the Münster that we tried previously. The secret brine is composed of local herbs, spices, and local wine. And the exact composition of this brine is only known to 2 people in the world, so I'm told. So those are 2 very important people. However, if you ask me what I think is the real secret ingredient of Appenzeller, other Alpine cheeses, and farmhouse and artisan cheeses in general, is I would say it's milk. Because we know that cheeses are made with milk, that's the primary ingredient. And the better the quality of the milk, the better the cheese is going to be. I mean, it's quite obvious and simple, but I think it's worth mentioning. And what's happening in Switzerland, I think, is completely amazing. Since 2002, the entire Swiss cheesemaking industry decided to voluntarily ban use of additives and colorants. So their milk is known as white gold. Not only that, a lot of Alpine cheeses and Alpine cheesemakers still practice the tradition of transhumance. And transhumance is the annual migration of cattle into the mountains, up to the Alps for the summer season, and then when they come back to the valley in the autumn. And if we think about it, what happens is cows have the most amazing diet in the world. They enjoy the best grass, flowers, crystal clear water that are never sprayed with anything, no pesticides, herbicides, nothing like that. So if you ask me, I believe that Alpine cheeses will rival organic cheeses in their purity any day. So I hope that helps you to enjoy this Appenzeller even more. But now I also would like to touch on the subject of cheese and happiness. And of course, you know that cheese makes me happy. I hope cheese makes you happy. And I would like to give you a few explanations for that, if I may. Aside from the fact that we just love the pleasure and we get a lot of joy when we have them on our palate, there are two other things that I'd like to bring to your attention. So there is tyrosine, you may have heard of before, and tyrosine is an amino acid which is responsible for giving us a boost during stress, fatigue, sleep deprivation, and things like that. So this amino acid is found in cheese, or we get from cheese, and that is completely unique and amazing, I think. But also we get a great boost when we enjoy cheeses with friends, with family, with our loved ones. And it's been scientifically proven that spending quality time with people that you love, with your friends, gives us this boost of 4 happy hormones. So if it's not reason to eat more cheese or eat it more regularly, I don't know what is. I hope you all agree with me. Now, for our final cheese, I would like to take you to the south of France. And we're going to Midi-Pyrénées and the village of Roquefort-sur-Soulzon. And this is, of course, where the famous Roquefort comes from. I am sure you have tried Roquefort before, and you maybe know quite a few things about Roquefort, but I would like to maybe bring another aspect to your knowledge of Roquefort today. So let's see if I can do that for you. Well, first of all, Roquefort is so integral to the French culture and just to the French cheese landscape, so to speak, that it was the first cheese that was protected by law in France in 1925. So super important. Throughout its history, it's always been made with raw ewe's milk and traditional rennet. And the only breed of sheep that's allowed to be used for making Roquefort is Lacan breed. You can see it here, they're gorgeous. You may also know, or maybe you don't realize, that actually goats and sheep are much smaller animals compared to cows, and therefore they will give significantly less milk per season. But when it comes to Lacan breed specifically, their yield is about 16 gallons per season. So if you think about it, it's really not a lot of milk. And therefore, it kind of explains the premium price of Roquefort and other sheep's milk cheeses. But that's what makes them extremely delicious as well. So there are 7 producers in total of Roquefort in the world. And of course, they all have to follow rules and regulations for making Roquefort. And one of them is that all of Roquefort that's produced has to be matured in convolute caves. So that's part of the character. That's where it develops slowly and beautifully. But tonight we are trying a very special Roquefort. And you won't be surprised to hear it is my favorite. It's Roquefort Le Vieux Berger, and it's made by Maison Combe. And what's incredible about them is that they are the smallest producer of all Roqueforts. So out of the 7, they are the smallest. They're a family-run enterprise. The last time I checked, they had about 10 people working there. So, and their philosophy is all about upholding manual craftsmanship and tradition. So they want to make it as traditional as possible. And therefore, they also care about what happens to their cheese when it leaves their facility, cheesemaking facility. And I have personally never seen it being vacuum packed. I know we always cut it from the wheel in the shop, and I've never seen it vacuum packed anywhere else. And I also have never seen being sold in supermarkets. So this incredible Roquefort you can only buy in specialist cheesemongers. So now let's enjoy it. Let's have a look. Let's have a taste. And if you'd like to compare it color-wise to our Appenzeller, you will notice now we've got a much lighter color, and that's more of a signature of sheep's milk cheeses, same as goat's milk cheeses. They will be much lighter in color because they don't carry beta carotene through their milk. So a lighter color, more kind of, shall I say, ivory, touch ivory. It's got lovely deep pockets, which are not incredibly deep in color, but you will see how much flavor they add. It's still quite amazing. Now, if we touch it or try to spread the cheese, there you will see that it has a spreadable texture. And let's have a smell. Very sweet and beautiful, mushroomy notes as well. And let's try it. How velvety is that? That makes your whole mouth alive. I think Selena agrees with me. I can see you, Selena. Excellent. Yes, incredible. Velvety texture, and it just kind of explodes in your mouth. It's got a good amount of salt, being blue cheese, of course. But of course, if we go beyond the salt, we'll also notice the sweetness and richness of sheep's milk. Absolutely amazing. Now, while you're finishing your cheese board and enjoying some Roquefort and the other cheeses that we enjoyed tonight, I also want to give you a few other tips and bits of my cheese wisdom, if I may. So a lot of people ask me if I eat a lot of cheese. And I actually like to draw a distinction between two things, eating a lot of cheese and eating cheese regularly. So what I actually do is I do enjoy cheese regularly. And I'll admit it, I eat it every week. Sometimes I eat it twice a week, mostly on a Saturday night. So tonight I will be enjoying the rest of my cheese board with a glass of wine for sure. But what I also do is I enjoy it in moderate amounts. So the picture you can see here on my slide is pretty much what I enjoy at a sitting. So there will be about 15 to 30 grams of each cheese tops. So we'll have smallish amounts. We don't put big wedges of cheese out on our cheese board generally, unless we haven't guessed, of course. And I also like to enjoy cheese as part of a healthy, balanced diet. So you remember I mentioned in the beginning that I had an eating disorder when I was younger. And after I've educated myself on nutrition, on health, and things like that, I've come to realize I actually do need food to survive. So these days, I do like to have my 3 meals a day. I will never leave my house without breakfast. I will never skip lunch, and God forbid I miss dinner as well. So 3 meals for sure. But when we enjoy a cheese board, like on Saturday, we make sure that we have something non-cheesy as our main meal. So that kind of balances it out. What I don't tend to do is leave enjoying cheeses just for Christmas. I think it's just a sure way to overindulge. It's just banning something from my diet like cheese or chocolate or ice cream is never a good idea. So I like to spread my enjoyment throughout the year. And like I mentioned previously, I don't replace my main meal with cheese. I like to have it in addition to, and therefore that's how I manage that thing about enjoying it in moderation. And I try not to overindulge. Now, some people may call this moderation. I do know of an even better word for it. It's a word, lagom. I don't know if you've heard of it before. So it's a Swedish concept, a Swedish word, and that's about having something not too much, but not too little. And when I found out about the Swedish word, that's like my favorite thing in the world. This just describes me to a T. I love to have things not too much, but not too little. So I hope you can get inspired by that as well. And just to bring my essence of my philosophy on enjoying cheese throughout the year and therefore having joie de vivre throughout the year, I'd like to say that when you enjoy cheeses with your favorite people, when you enjoy them regularly rather than once a year, and in balance or moderation, you will be sure to find that joie de vivre in your life and just in your enjoyment of cheese. So, to sum up, I hope you agree with me that fine cheese is absolutely fascinating. I could be here with you for hours and hours talking about them, how they're made, and all of the different intricacies. But it's also good for you. It's good for your body, it's good for your soul, and that's why they are just a perfect way, all of these cheeses, to slow down and savor life. If you'd like to learn more about cheese and kind of get really educated and knowledgeable about cheese, I thoroughly recommend joining the Cheese Academy and taking a few courses with them. Can't remember if I mentioned in the beginning, I've done level 1 and 2 myself, and now I'm on to level 3. So if you're interested to do the same, be sure to check them out. But if you'd like to also continue your journey with the Cheese Lady, I do have a special offer for you. And as a thank you for attending tonight and for listening to me ramble on about cheese and health, I'd like to offer you 10% of our cheeses, our cheese selections, and unusually, we don't normally do that, of our subscription boxes. So if you use the code BCW23 until the end of October, you'll be able to get yourself 10% off. And of course, if you subscribe, you'll be able to enjoy cheese regularly delivered to your door. And of course, you can follow us on social media like Instagram and Facebook. I think Instagram is the best for cheese pictures. So now, to finish my presentation, I'd like to say I hope that you will find ways to bring joie de vivre to the rest of your life, to the rest of your year, and just for forever. And I'm gonna stay on and see if you have any questions for me tonight. Please unmute yourself and ask away.
Svetlana, it's Selena. I was just wondering about, you've talked quite a lot about the bacteria and the various other things, the fungi that are in the rinds and what have you. Is that, I mean, I take it it's all good for our guts, that sort of bacteria. Is it part of the sort of probiotics, do you know, or is it
Yes.
something we should just, I think you're absolutely right about everything in moderation, but enough to enjoy. But I was just interested in that aspect of it.
That's an amazing question, and thank you so much for mentioning that. I should have touched on that now in retrospect. Okay. Yes, you're absolutely right. Cheese does have that amazing thing inside of it as well, which is the probiotic qualities of it. Because there's natural bacteria happening and digesting the milk when we're making the cheese, a lot of it remains, and especially in soft cheeses. So if you want to get the most of probiotic qualities of cheese, I do recommend enjoying soft cheeses, especially those made with raw milk.
Okay, so that'd be like the Latours and San Feliciens, those sorts of soft
Brie de
cheeses,
Meaux, camemberts, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Soft cheeses are especially good for probiotic qualities.
Ah, okay, interesting. Thank you. Thanks.
Amazing. And of course, like you say, on the outside, on the rind, we have a lot of bacterial activity going on. So all of that contributes. Absolutely. Yeah. The rinds are delicious, especially, and very good on softer cheeses.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Fantastic question. Thank you.
No problem.
Does anybody else wants to ask anything? Lovely. Well, thank you so much for attending tonight. It's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed our journey, and don't be strangers. Follow us.
Thanks,
and
Svetlana.
Get in touch. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Lovely. Bye. Have a great night.